Hey everybody, thank you for joining. We have Josh and Jack and Troy with us, and I'm just going to do a quick little introduction with Josh. Josh has many talents, not only project owner, but project manager, and then his passion is actually doing games, and he's had a video gaming industry, which I do not have at all. So he would be the expert on that. And throughout his jobs, he's worked with designers as well. So pretty much in the whole creative field, working at an agency, working at a startup, working at a bigger company. So I know as we all go into our new UX careers or UI careers, our partnership with actually working with product. And then not only that, but he has an awesome great game that basically he did coming out. So Josh, if you can just spend maybe about 30 seconds, kind of introduce yourself, that basically what I didn't mention, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, Terry, you did a great job. Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Josh Bakken, and I am a product owner, product manager, producer. Kind of just depends on what industry you drop me in, but more or less it's take a project and kind of move it from start to finish, and hopefully everyone's not in tears when you get to the final deliverable. So that's kind of my job wherever you drop me in. As Terry mentioned, I have background both in and out of the games industry. I've been a producer for free-to-play games. For people who know what those are, there's basically games that you get for free, and then the companies hope that you buy little virtual goods like dresses or a pet or something like that. So I've had experience in that over the years, and did a few mobile games. And then what I'm doing right now is focusing primarily on a game that I designed called Zoo Tiles Hime. And it's a tabletop game. There's no digital component to it yet, but it's something that's getting a lot of really good response from retailers and from the game industry so far. So knock on wood, you'll be seeing it. It's scheduled to go to print next month for an October release. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about that more during this segment, but yeah, definitely excited about that.
That's a great month, October.
Yeah.
That's a great month.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jack or Troy, if you have any questions, there's really no format in here. Josh is here to answer your folks' question or anything like that.
I think
Go, Jack.
Yeah.
So can you explain the game? Just kind of give us like what kind of game is Zoo Tiles?
Oh, sure, absolutely. I mean, I didn't want this to be a whole segment on Zoo Tiles, but I'm absolutely thrilled to jump into that. So basically, Zoo Tiles is. Let me just show you this little thing here. So you might see this little symbol here. It's a game that's loosely based on the creatures of the Chinese Zodiac. So the Chinese Zodiac has like monkey and rabbit, and some of those creatures are compatible with each other, and some of the creatures aren't compatible. So what you do is you take these little tiles that look like this represents the pig, and what you're trying to do with your opponent who's sitting across from you is to complete patterns. So for instance, if somebody I have like 4 tiles here. I have 4 tiles here. And if you were playing, I can't show it on the table, but if you were playing, what you try to do is complete a square of 4 tiles where all the tiles in the square are compatible with each other. And if you can do that, then you would remove those tiles from the board and you would score a point for each of those. And so the object of the game is to score 12 points. So if you can do that 3 times, you win the game. The tricky part of it is that you're trying to complete a square in the table, but your opponent is also trying to use the same square or the same tiles in the square to complete a square as well. So you're not only using your tiles to complete the square, but you can also use your opponent's. And then there's tiles that change the board state, like a horse might kick a tile over to the side, or a ram might push a tile over, or a rabbit might hop over a tile. Pretty much anything you think like an animal would normally do.
Cool.
These are the types of things that would manipulate the tiles on the board. And so it's really fun. There's a lot of really cool interactions, and I've gotten a lot of just, I can tell you lots of stories about people coming to a convention. Like I go to show it to a convention and kids just staying there and, playing for hours and hours. And it's not just a kids game. Adults really tend to like it as well. If you're very much into strategy, it's a game for you. And also if you're just into like having fun, it's also that it can also scratch that itch as well. So it's kind of a little multi-dimensional. That's kind of what it's about.
It sounds really good, actually. I really like that.
Are you a board game player?
I'm also, well, not also, you've got one, but I'm an aspiring board game designer also. That's kind of like my side passion. So I've got some board games I'm always kind of working on and everything.
So well, let's see. I don't want to ask where you live because I don't want to put you on the spot. But let me just give a shout out to the San Francisco Board Game Designers Club. If you have a Facebook or at all, you can look them up. And they're a really great group. I'm a member, and we meet every other Wednesday. But now we used to meet in person, but now we meet virtually through Tabletop Simulator. And it's a great group of people. If you ever have any designs that you kind of have cooking in the back that you want to kind of bring out to other designers and say, hey guys, what do you think about this? That's a great group to get really honest feedback from. And so I would recommend them as a source to talk to and to join. Great group.
Cool. Check them out. I'm in Los Angeles. It doesn't have to be a secret to anyone.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure they would love to have you, and I'm sure Los Angeles probably has a few great groups as well.
We probably do. Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
Cool. Yeah. Keep doing it. Whatever, if it's your side hustle, if it's your dream, just absolutely keep on it for sure.
Cool.
I just had a question regarding the whole development of games.
Mm-hmm.
How do you come up with of a brainstorm, or basically, where would you start?
Well, I think you start. For me, this particular game started when I was looking at other games, and just when I look at other games, just my natural curiosity or my natural desire to kind of to break them down and to see the mechanics of how they work, and to also judge the mechanics to see if that's a really interesting mechanic that I've never seen before. I love that. That's like, I love seeing a game where I look at it and go, wow, I've never seen that anywhere before. And it's really fun and it's very clean. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. So I'm always looking for those types of designs, but I'm not often finding those types of designs. And what you do find is a lot of other stuff. And so it gives you a lot of opportunity to question and be like, oh man, that's really bad. Like, that's horrible, as a matter of fact. So, but then the next question is, what would you do to improve it? And so that's kind of what started Zoo Tiles. Was I was looking at a game and I was just like, wow, this is absolutely horrible. How would I fix this? How would I even start? And then down that pathway just got me thinking of different ways to represent things on a board. And then I just kind of thought of tiles. It wasn't a tile game at all, but tiles just came to mind. I started playing around with that idea. And that's kind of where Zoo Tiles at least was born. But yeah, for me, it's just finding, questioning things, trying to make things better. One of the main reasons why I chose tiles versus cards was because there's a huge genre of games, tabletop mm-hmm. games, called collectible card games. And those were started around 1993. And everybody and their mother, there was one major company, one major game that came out, and everyone started seeing all the money it was generating. So they wanted to jump on the collectible card game coattails, and I didn't want to be a part of that at all. I didn't want to be associated with that. I just felt it was embarrassing. I was embarrassed for the people who were doing that. That's how embarrassed I was. So it was going to be the last thing in the world that I wanted to do. And so that kind of forced my hand away in a way to come up with something completely different. And that's another reason why, you know, the tile thing was born, because I was not going to do another card game. So
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I I think you're talking about MTG maybe, and I don't know if there's any legal people here from MTG. We can talk about it.
yeah. Well, yeah, so that's the game. And you know, I don't want to make this whole segment about that, but you know, when it first came out, it blew my mind. Like it literally blew my mind. And
everyone's doing it though now.
Yeah, and so I just loved it. I loved it more than I could even like put into words. But what I saw, like I jumped on late 93 was when it was first coming out, right? And people didn't know anything about alphas or betas or anything like that, like nothing. And what I saw from late 93 to probably around 96, that was kind of when I was most into it, was it came from something that was very open and free, and people could make, like I would go to a tournament and I would see things I'd never seen before. Even though I'm aware of the cards, just the way people would put them together, you know, was completely different than what I had seen before. But around 96, 97, I think, started to implement the meta decks, where someone would make one deck and then everybody else would copy that one deck. And I was just like, I was not really into that very much. What I would do is purposely try to build a deck to beat all the people who decided to not like be creative and make a meta deck. But that got boring after a while, so then I just kind of like put that on the back burner. But yeah.
I have another question related to the game design. So when you're designing your game, I imagine you're play testing with friends or also that club, and how do you have like some kind of like file structure, or like, you know, how do you track all that and like the feedback you're getting from people in creating multiple
right here.
you just hand note stuff and everything?
Oh yeah.
And do you like, you take those notes and then you just like quickly kind of like make out more paper prototype, you know, paper components and stuff or whatever, and then just go right back into testing? And do you like, for me, like, do you feel like you eventually just kind of like lose old versions of the game? It's just like, is it organically evolving, or do you have like a whole backlog of like old versions of the game that you will go back and look at? Like how do you do that?
Yeah, well, it is definitely organically evolving, and there aren't a lot of like V1, V1.1, V1.2. It's more like the game has been generally the same, but in play testing, I get feedback from people. Like one of the pieces of feedback that was given to me multiple times was the fact that if they're playing a deck with multiple creatures, like if they're playing a deck with rams and rabbits, let's say, and for whatever reason, the luck of the draw or the unluck of the draw, they end up with a rabbit in the playing area, but their hand is filled with ram cards or tiles that affect rams, then they're just stuck, right? And you can chalk that up to and say to them, well, you know what, that's just bad luck of the draw. But I was hearing that enough that I was like, you know, I have to figure out a way for people to always be able to do something. So I came up with the idea of letting somebody pitch 2 tiles out of their hand to draw 1 tile. They can do that once on every turn. And since I've instituted that, I've never had that feedback again. So that's an example of kind of how I react and change to the game. I really design to people's, I try to be empathetic as to people's feelings when they're playing the game. Like if somebody's feeling stuck, I need to fix that. And a lot of times what I do with the tiles, how they're designed, in certain trading card games, they have like blanket rules, like, well, you cannot have more than 4 of any card in a deck, right? They just kind of make that blanket statement. But what I've done is I've gone in and done every single tile. I've if I limited it because of what that individual tile can do, like the pain that that individual tile can affect to someone else, right? So, I so um, so in certain games they just allow you 4, and then you're playing against somebody with 4, and you know they have 4, so it's just like, oh man, I'm just gonna get hit with this thing. You know, the first time you see it, you're like, yeah, I know what's gonna happen, and I know I gotta grind through 3 more of these situations, right? And to me, that just was not super fun. So I feel free to design a tough card, or a tough tile, I should say, and make that really punishing. But if I am gonna create that and put that into the game, that's gonna be a one of in a deck. So then, you know, you get punished and you're like, oh, at least I know that that's not gonna happen again. So so those are kind of some of the ways that I try to design from the receiving end of things that are happening in my game, if you will, as opposed to, I think some other games, they design to the delivering part, right? So they make these really high-powered things, and to kind of get people all excited, like, oh, I want that high-powered thing so I can punish somebody, you know, and that's kind of what gets their juices flowing. I'm kind of the opposite in that, yeah, we do need powerful things to happen in the game, but I want to limit that because I don't want the person on the receiving end of that to be so pummeled, if you will, that they're just like, oh, you know what, I don't even want to deal with this game anymore. Like, I'll go find something else. So Zoo Tiles is very friendly. It's a really friendly type of game. It's a lot of laughter, a lot of smiles. If you play a game of Zoo Tiles and you don't leave smiling, then either you or did something wrong or I did something wrong. So that's kind of my philosophy.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, unless you have a child that always wants to win and maybe they didn't win, so you might have that, but overall.
Yeah, because at the core, I mean, I hate to say this because it seems like it would limit the people interested in the game, but at the core, what it was designed for was for a kid, like a 9 or 10-year-old kid, to have a favorite game that they could take to their parent and go, hey, let's play this. And the parent be like, oh yeah, I like that game. That's a fun game. Let's do that together. As opposed to the kid taking like Junior Clue or just like, you know, just some like really dumbed down game. I don't know, just think of any of them, like Scrabble Junior or just any kind of junior version of anything that I know that the parent isn't necessarily going to like, but they'll do it just because they want to, you know, they want to engage and they want to make the child happy. I personally, and maybe it's out there and I just don't see it, but I have not seen a game where it can be something that's as intellectually stimulating for an adult to have fun with and like a 9 or 10-year-old child. And so obviously their mental developments are at different stages and the adult is much more sophisticated. But that doesn't mean as an adult I can't play a game and see what's going on and see my 9 or 10-year-old, like the gears in their head, you know, going, what should I do? What should I do? Mm-hmm. And then maybe the 9 or 10-year-old makes a move that wouldn't be the ideal move. Maybe they didn't see it. So that might be a teaching moment to go like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. But you know, if you did this, you know, this is what would happen, you know? And so it's satisfying to the adult and hopefully it's fun for the kid. And that's kind of one of the major reasons for Zoo Tiles to even be in existence, because I didn't see something like that in the marketplace. And I feel that this does kind of fit that niche. And I've also play tested it with families. So I was at a convention earlier this year called DundraCon, and a family came up, mom and dad. I think one of their kids was like, I want to say 6 or 7, and the other one was 9 or 10. And the 9 or 10-year-old sat with me, and then we played against, he and I played against the rest of his family. And I didn't really even play that much. I taught him how to play, and he played for me. And so, you know, he was having a really fun time. The parents were liking the fact that their child was engaged in something a little bit more, I don't know, challenging, I guess, if you will. And it was great. So I've had a lot of instances like that. So the proof is kind of in the pudding that what I'm hoping was working is working. So it's kind of a good thing.
Awesome. Yeah, I think having board games definitely helps bring the family together as well.
Yeah. And then again, the reason why I hesitate sometimes to bring that up is because I don't want people to think that it's just a game for kids, and that parents will like that's not the only dynamic really that's going on. We had a game demo last year at a game store up in Reading, and I had two like people my age, kind of like in their 40s, getting close to 50, and adult guys, right? Adult males come in and they were like, "Oh, what's this?" And taught them how to play. And they were like, "Whoa, this is amazing. Do you have any extras?" So I gave them some extras, and they went back in the corner of this game store, and they just played each other like just ruthless, just like they were like going at it, these like two grown men. And so I don't like to say it's just a game for kids, because it does have enough strategy and complexity that very strategic, competitive, adults can actually enjoy it and sink their teeth into it as well.
I have another question. So this is something that I haven't dived into too much for myself, but I've been, starting to think about it. But, once you have your prototype, your game at a place where you're like, okay, I think I'm ready to start pitching this to people. And I want to build like a prototype that actually looks, I guess manufacture one that is just not, simple pieces of cardboard and whatever that you've been using so far. What are your means? Like what are the next steps? Do you take the paper prototype to like conventions and you're showing that to like the big wigs or whatever? Or do you find a manufacturer to build like a few, really nice polished versions in your own, maybe you hired a graphic artist off Fiverr or something. I don't know.
Yeah. So there's really no one way to do it perfect and correct, right? But I'll just give you my feedback from doing it myself, and also from seeing other people do it. The thing that you want to do is you want to get your game polished mechanically way before you worry about polishing it from a design perspective, I guess.
Sure.
And the way you do that, and now is a golden age. Well, the coronavirus kind of kneecapped it a little bit, but I would say before coronavirus, we were in a golden age of tabletop games, in particular. And so what does that mean? That means a lot of people were having a lot of great ideas and starting to form groups of other people. Like I mentioned, the San Francisco Game Designers Club. I'm sure there's a bunch in LA, but one thing that was popping up everywhere is like game cafes. So you could go in board game cafes. You could get a board game out of their library and play it, have pizza and drink, whatever. And those have been just popping up like weeds. They have been left and right. So generally, where those are and where those are popping up, you also have game designer nights. Because so there's one that I've gone to a lot of times called Victory Point Cafe. It's in Berkeley. And they have regular like once a month nights. And what I would do is I would take a design. If I were doing it all over from scratch, I would take the design, I would do it, out of the printer, make it as nice as you can, just based on what you have access to, and then take it to those board game groups or board game nights and just play it and see what the people's reactions are. If their reaction is like, wow, this is really fun, and they're very enthusiastic about it, then, show more people and make sure and almost get it to the point where it's a universal experience for you. When you go and show someone that what the reaction is going to be, and the reaction is going to be like, wow, this is great. And then once you have that, I would take it to smaller publishers first and see what they say, and then slowly start to work your way up the ladder. And I would not start with the big boys first, like the Hasbros or the Matels. And there's a lot of different reasons I don't even want to get into. But one is they see very, very few designs. I'm one of the lucky people. I've had meetings with Matel. I think they said they see like less than 2% of all their submissions. And I've been there like 4 times already for different submissions. So I feel kind of fortunate to have been able to talk with them and the executives there about games and stuff like that. But really, they're not really looking for, at least in my experience, let's just make sure that I say that. In my experience, they're not looking for great game design, the larger companies. They really don't care. What they care about is attaching an IP, to something, and then selling it to the masses. And they really don't care about the next great board game design or the mechanics at all. And so if you're going into it all excited about these mechanics that you've created and you went and showed people, they just be like, yeah, whatever. I literally had a meeting with a VP at Matel, and I brought a videotape of kids playing this game that I invented. This isn't the one I'm talking about now. This is one prior. And the kids were like, this was right after school, where they had options of either playing this game in the front room or going and watching like cartoons in the other room. And they just stayed glued to this game, and they played it, and the game lasted like 2 hours long, the game, and then their next words out of their mouth were, can we play it again? And so we captured all this on video. I just kind of put the camera in the corner and just kind of watched this. So I brought it to Matel. I'm like, hey guys, look at this. Like, this is getting kids away from TV. And not only did they want to play it, but then after they played it for a long time, they wanted to play it again. Like, isn't that great? And the guy was like, oh, don't put too much stock into what kids tell you about your games, And I was like, what are you even talking about? Like, how could you not put stock in that? That's exactly what that's what you want, right? You want things that are engaging with kids, and they're telling you they like it, right? It was like the weirdest thing. This guy's a VP, vice president at one of the 2 major toy game companies in the world. And I was just like, wow, man. But that's just the reality of toys and games at that level. If you actually design a game and a system that you think is unique and you're proud of it, I think it's much more satisfying to take that and to shop it around to smaller publishers. You might find them on like Boardgame Geek. I actually went to the Gamma Expo earlier this year. I wasn't searching for a publisher, but that's another convention, another expo that you can find smaller publishers. And smaller publishers, they'll take more risks, and they'll appreciate more what you're trying to do and what you're trying to bring to the table. You probably will get shafted pretty hard on the royalty, but it just kind of depends on your motivations, right? Like for me personally, I did not want to get shafted on the royalty, so that's why I formed a company called Zoo Studios as a vehicle for Zoo Tiles, and that's pretty much all Zoo Studios LLC is for, is to push Zoo Tiles. And so it's a self-publishing thing. I was very fortunate to find some people who were as excited about the game as I was, and so I was able to get some capital and some financing for the game that's allowing me a lot of freedoms that a lot of other game designers don't have the luxury of having. But anyway, that's kind of my take on where you would go and the levels of polish at certain things, at certain levels, I guess. And just to reiterate, if I was, don't put a lot of visual whiz bang into it until you're really sure that the mechanics are there, and then you can add at your leisure. So that's probably a really long answer to your pretty simple question.
No, I knew that was it was an open-ended question. I mean, that's a long part of the process, so I knew there was going to be a lot to it. And when you were saying going to the publishers, the smaller publishers, it's okay to bring your very simple paper, version of the game, right? You don't need to.
As long as the game's playable, right? And
yeah, exactly.
People know what it is that they're doing. I think the smaller publishers are gamers at heart, at least. So they've seen a lot, they've processed a lot, and they will be able to jump into your game as long as your game makes sense, right? As long as it's like a good game, they'll be able.
Yeah, of course.
They'll be able to pick it up and talk the talk with you.
Cool. Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna wrap this up because it's almost time. But
Oh, yeah.
anyway, Jack and Troy, thank you for joining, and Josh, thank you so much for your time and explaining your game and your process and answering these awesome questions. I know personally I've learned a lot, and I just play the games. I don't make them, but it's really interesting to hear. So we're gonna let you go.
Thank you, Terry, for having me. And I am going to give a shout out. If anybody wants to check out the pre-order page for Zoo Tiles, Hime, if you go to www.zoohime.com, you can see a beautiful pre-order page with pictures and all that good, a video of how to play, all that good stuff. So
awesome, definitely. And can you repeat the website again, just in case?
It's Zoohime, www.zoohime.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, as always, Terry.
Yeah, and Pau Hana, Aloha Friday.
Bye, guys. Thanks for the time.